All right, so when I first got involved in grassroots animal rights activism, pretty much everyone that was involved in the scene believed that environmental activism was just as important as animal activism. And in fact, there was a ton of crossover in the attendance and the people that were showing up to actions. It was not uncommon to see an animal rights activist showing up to a Earth First event, and it was not uncommon to see some Earth Firsters showing up to a anti-vivisection event, and so on and so forth. But you push forward 20 years, and we look around, and the same is not true. And I think when you take a step further back and look at broader left-wing movements, animal rights activism is quite frankly irrelevant because people in those scenes don't identify with us and vice versa. And I think there's a lot of good reason for that. And while I have a lot of ideas on some of why that came to be, I think the one that stands out the most is the fact that we focus on consumer choices. The fact that we focus on getting people to go vegan. And unfortunately, for a lot of people, that's a very tall order and it can be extremely alienating. I'm going to give an anecdotal example of how I've seen this play out in my own life. I have two siblings. Both of them have been vegetarian for well over a decade. We have about a 10 and 15 year age gap. And for us, protesting is a family affair. Every time there's a big thing that happens in politics, whether it be the government trying to crack down on a women's right to choose on what they do with their bodies, or a authoritarian politician being elected into the presidency, or the May Day March, whatever it may be, me and my siblings have been going to these events for a very long time. And they used to come out to animal rights events fairly frequently as well. I remember one time recently at a protest, I was asking, the youngest of the two siblings, like, hey, like, what the why don't you ever come out to animal rights events anymore? Like, we have these anti-fur actions. We would love to see you there. The reason they said that they don't come is because vegans are weird. And when they were pressed on this, the reality is that they just don't feel comfortable at the events. And it's because when you show up to an animal rights event, if you're not vegan, it becomes very obvious that this is a hostile environment for people that are not vegan. And you can't, you almost can't come to an event without somebody coming up to you and being like, hey, how many years have you been vegan? I've been vegan 5, I've been vegan 20, I've been vegan 6 months. What's your favorite veggie burger? The entire dialogue and discussion tends to be focused on consumer choices rather than action on the streets for animals. All right, so the reason this comes to mind right now and the reason why CAFT wanted to talk about it is because we've been seeing all over the internet animal rights activists talking about the fires that are happening right now in Los Angeles. I've been seeing videos being shared of mountain lions that are walking the streets of LA looking for refuge. We're seeing videos of people trying to save rabbits on the side of the road. The brush all down the highway is on fire. We're seeing these vegan influencers come out and point the finger at people who are not vegan, saying this is your fault. This is the consumer's fault that these fires are happening, and it's because you're not vegan. And while CAFT certainly does not agree with this narrative, I think that one of the things that these fires have done is it's really pointed out that this is an intersectional issue. What is less obvious is the cause. And unless you live with your head in the sand, I think that we can all agree that climate change is a huge reason why this is all going on. But I think that we need to dig a little bit deeper than that and look at the root of the problem, which is, frankly, capitalism. Corporations, they don't tear down old growth forests because they get a kick out of it. They do it because it makes them money. And you can apply this across the board. The city of Los Angeles didn't cut budgets on the fire department because they relish to see people lose their homes during a natural disaster. They did it to save money. They did it because of capitalism. And the same applies for animal rights activism. I can't keep track of the number of times that I've came across activists that are trying to paint people that participate in large-scale animal exploitation as these people that are uniquely evil or uniquely bad, when in reality, oftentimes these are just normal people who are trying to make a living, and they just so happen to live in a capitalist system that rewards them financially for bad behavior. A lot of these people are not even particularly rich. I used to be a part of a cell of the Animal Liberation Front in 2013, and there was a small farm that we targeted. We liberated 2,000 minks from that farm. It was literally every single animal that was there, and the result of that action closed the farm. But, when I showed up to that farm, it's not like I believe that the people that ran it are uniquely evil or uniquely bad. They just happen to be participating in a system that rewards them financially to put minks in tiny cages, skin them, and sell their bodies for fur. And during my time working underground as an activist with the Animal Liberation Front, every time that I would put a mask on at night, it wasn't because I was motivated to go out and target people because they were uniquely evil or bad or something like this. I was doing it because I was angry at a system. I was angry at a capitalist system that allows fur farmers to profit off of turning wildlife into a commodity. I was angry at a system that allowed fur farmers to skin minks and foxes and take their skins and sell them to rich people that are using this as nothing more than a status symbol. I was angry at a system that I hated so profoundly, not because of the way that it affected animals, but because of the way that it affected me and the people in my community. I can remember going out with my mother, digging through trash cans for food when I was young so that we could feed ourselves. I remember, the pain that was felt in the 2008 recession when my family lost their home. My anger towards capitalism isn't because I can understand what it's like to be that mink inside of that tiny cage. I cannot imagine what that would be like. It would be horrendous. But what I can relate to is what it's like to be a victim of capitalism. The fires in Los Angeles have really highlighted that animal activists, human rights activists, environmental activists all have a common enemy. But it's not animal abusers, it's capitalism. And the reality is that no amount of consumer choices is going to end the fur industry. Fur farmers are not shaking in their boots because some new faux fur company comes out and they're concerned about losing business through that. What they're concerned about is the Animal Liberation Front breaking into their fur farm and liberating all the animals and putting them out of business. That's why they invest in security systems. That's why they invest in fences. It's not because we're out there purchasing more veggie burgers. It's because they're concerned about people actually standing up and taking action. And what scares these industries more than anything is for us to stop pointing our fingers at each other, to stop pointing our fingers at consumers and putting the blame on people that aren't vegan or aren't making the right consumer choices that we would like them to make. But rather, if we start working together and start pointing the fingers at them and holding them accountable for what they do to animals, for what they do to wildlife, for what they do to people and the environment. So the reason we decided to put out this video is because we have heard more tone-deaf vegan influencers than we can honestly stomach. And the sad reality is that social media these days is shaping what the grassroots animal rights movement is doing. It's not too often that we meet people that are reading zines. It's not too often that we meet people that are exposed to radical politics. Half the time they're just, they're recycling something that they saw on Instagram. We want to see a grassroots animal rights movement that is more inclusive, not less. I want to see a movement that I can bring my siblings and my family members and my neighbors out to an anti-fur protest and them not be shamed for showing up because they don't make the right dietary choices. And would I prefer them to be vegan? Of course, absolutely. I've been vegan for going on for about 20 years now. Of course, I would love that, but I would much rather that those people come out to the action, because at the end of the day, it's the actions that matter, not the consumer choices. When we raided that mink farm, not once did the minks come up to me and say, hey, what dietary choices are you making? Those minks were simply thankful that they were out of those cages and that they were touching the grass for the very first time. This whole social media thing, YouTube, whatever, wherever this video ends up landing, is something that CAFT has by and large tried to avoid. And I think that's in part because of who the people are that are involved. There are 4 people involved directly in CAFT that are ex-members of the Animal Liberation Front. And when you come from that kind of background, you spend your entire career as an activist hiding from the government, hiding from cameras, hiding from exposure, because your activism depends on being anonymous. 2025 is a new year and social media is not going anywhere, and CAFT is going to be putting a lot more effort into movement education so that we can all be better prepared to take on the industries and the systems that are killing people, the environment, and animals. We're kind of new to this social media thing, and frankly, we hate it. Let us know what you think of the video, maybe what you want to see in the future. We got a lot of ideas around this. We do suspect what we want to put out is probably not necessarily what is going to be popular, but we're going to do it anyways because CAFT is not a group that honestly really needs to be popular. We're able to take down these corporations. We're able to take down these designers with a very small group of people. So we would rather invest in quality rather than quantity.